Welcome to the latest edition of the Jungle Juice podcast. I'm Sam Gormley. He's Mick Nelson. Mick, how you doing?
Oh, today's the day. Today's the day, Samuel.
Yeah.
Today's the day that I piss off everybody in this group that watches this podcast. I'm gonna piss off a lot of people. It's not gonna be a good time for me.
You're wasting no time and already, but I like that because in this business we call that the tease. So why is Mick going to tick off a lot of you?
For those that know me and know that the news that came out today,
you will know.
You'll know.
We just gotta drop the little carrot there, and you gotta listen throughout the entirety of today's show, and we will find the point as to where Mick is going to tick everyone up. Because coming up on the show today, Bengals Ring of Honor nominees have been released. Mick and I get a vote each. Since we are both season ticket holders, we get our own vote. And we are going to go through each of the nominees. And then at the end of the show today, we are going to give who we are going to vote for our picks for the 2024 Ring of Honor. Last year, Mick, if I do remember correctly, we got it correct. I think both of our votes were the ones who got inducted in.
Yep.
The year prior, I think you voted for Chad a year earlier, and they went Isaac Curtis over Chad. But other than that, we've been pretty much 100% so far with our voting. I don't know if it'll continue this year, and that'll be kind of interesting to go through.
Do you and I have the same guy?
No.
No, we don't have the same guy.
We cannot vote for the same person anyway, so we get two separate votes. So I specifically went with someone different that we'll mention. Just be sure to mention at the end of the show today.
Okay. Here's my thing, and I just thought about this because I'm just like looking back at Chad's and Isaac Curtis's careers, and like, don't get me wrong, Isaac Curtis was a really good wide receiver for us. He was a perennial Pro Bowler. Probably the first guy that was like really good at wide receiver for us. But Chad definitely had the better career. Like, do people factor in people's age and they're like, oh well, this person might die eventually? Like, we want to get them in before something bad happens. I don't know. I just kind of thought about that.
And there is a few of those that I think are going to be interesting conversations to have because there's some names that have different aspects to it that I'm really interested in how fans are going to consider when it comes to it. I think that there's a few names with that based on some quote unquote off the field issues or some dramatic things and how everyone kind of reacts to that. And I think it'll be really interesting to discuss. But before we get into that, Mick, we do have to hit up some of the news of the week, and the first big news comes, I think it either came yesterday or Monday, and it was one of those things that I think Adam Schefter just had a scheduled tweet that he did about 6 months ago. And actually, you know what? He probably did it a year and a half ago that he could have said, guess what? Yep, T. Higgins, he was tagged. Remember that? Yep, that happened. Anybody surprised? No. Oh yeah, guess what? He's not going to sign that tag, and instead he's going to sit out part of workouts. And other surprising news, Mick, it's raining right now, so it's wet outside.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not really news. You told me T. Higgins news before the show, and I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, I don't know. Yeah. He's not going to do workouts.
Yeah. And the reason you're saying that is because you're so unsurprised by that even being a thing, correct?
Yeah.
And I mean,
everybody's losing it too. Everybody's losing it.
Yeah, it's one of these things. If you look at the T. Higgins situation, and Paul Dehner Jr. from The Athletic had a tweet, and it's exactly correct, is what do him and Jesse Bates have in common? They have the same agent. Guess what's going to happen? It's going to be played pretty much the same exact way that the Jesse Bates scenario was going to be played. T. Higgins will show up probably August the 15th,
I think 20th. Did Jesse hold out in the camp at all in 2021? I couldn't remember. Or 2022. I couldn't remember if he did.
Because if you remember, he watched the first preseason game from a suite.
Ah.
And it would not shock me if T. Higgins does the same thing. In fact, T, if you want to take our 2 seats for the first preseason game, I'd be willing to give those up for you to sit in our seats. Maybe. I don't know. You might have to buy them off of us. We can give you the week 3 game, though, against the Colts, because that's a Thursday night, and I can just sit here on Prime and watch it there. But
no, I'll sit with T. I'll hang out with him. I like the guy. Seems like a cool guy. Never met him. He could be he could be a piece of shit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think it's the T. Higgins situation is the least surprising thing. He will show up. I mean, it's this simple, Mick. T. Higgins is not an idiot. And if he was an idiot, he would be an idiot to walk away from almost $22 million. Because if he holds out into the season, he will not get paid. And I don't care what job you're going to do. $22 million is life-changing money.
Yeah. You also know who's not missing out on his payday either? Brian Mulligetta or David Mulligetta, whatever that guy's name is. He wants his payday. He wants his how much of a percentage do they make? Like
5% or something. It probably depends on the agent.
I think it'd be more than 5.
It probably depends a lot on the agent and so on as to what deal they particularly have with the player. But still, he is going to play. He won't show up until the middle of August. But I don't imagine him to be a problem because if we're being honest, T. Higgins has everything to gain from this situation. I mean, him not playing is only going to hurt him. But if he goes out and he balls out this year, he's going to get that huge contract that he wants. It won't be the Bengals, but it's going to be someone else.
See, I think that, and I think that he's definitely going to play. And just to add on to your point, in 2023, T kind of played himself out of the wide receiver 1 money, I think. I think that we saw a decrease in his quality of play from 2022 to 2023. He was great in 2021 and 2022. We didn't see that in 2023. Now, a lot of it had to do with injuries, but there were just some games. The Rams game in particular last year where he was honestly a liability on the football field. The Seahawks game wasn't great either. So I think he knows he has something to prove here. He right now he's seeking Michael Pittman money. I don't think that any team would have been willing to give him that this offseason. I don't know. So he has a lot to prove. He's not going to sit out.
Into the season.
He's not going to. We're going to see him as long as he's healthy all 17 games in 2024. So
I agree. I'm not even a little bit worried. Now, if we get to September the 1st and he hasn't reported, okay, then we can start talking about maybe getting a little bit worried about that. But even then, what's the first game of the season? I don't even remember now the date. And of course so first game of the season is September the 8th. So if we get to September the 1st, which was 1 week out from the start of the season, and he's not there, that's when I get a little bit worried. But even then, in all seriousness, if he's working out on his own, he's got the relationship with Joe Burrow. He could probably show up on the Saturday night at 8:00, get the game plan, and let's roll. These guys are professionals. He's working out on his own. I'm not even just a little bit worried about it, but we had to talk about it. And guess what we're probably going to do every show until he reports, Mick? Talk about T. Higgins, because it's the same thing as the Joe Burrow contract last year. It's like the obligatory thing that since we are hosting a Bengals podcast, we have to talk about T. Higgins and everything that's going to go along with this, which is at least a good thing because think about it this way. This time next year, T. Higgins is not going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. That's disappointing, but we're not going to have this conversation this time in a year.
It's way more easier to stomach T. Higgins not coming here next year than, or maybe not easier to stomach. That might not be the best phrase to put it. I am much more okay with T. Higgins not being here next year than I was with Jesse Bathley.
And the Bengals saw.
Yeah. Because at least if T is gone, you have Jamar Chase on the roster. You have him on the roster. Hopefully he gets extended this camp, before the season, kind of the way that the
He's
Joe
not.
Burrow contract went. You don't think it's going to happen? Well, the wide
Here's the thing.
receivers have been slow to move on the
Here's the thing. Jamar Chase is not going to get extended until Justin Jefferson gets extended.
I think that Jamar probably gets extended before Jay Jettas because
no shot.
I think deep down, these guys that are in, extension negotiations at the same time, it's like, I think more often than not, they're like seeing who which football, the worser football player, the worser receiver is going to get their extension done first. Like we saw that with Burrow, right? Because Burrow's better than Hurts. He's better than Herbert. Who else signed an extension in the offseason last year out of the quarterbacks? I mean, at least those two. And
then Burrow.
Those guys got extended first. So if you're kind of applying the same logic, well, Jay Jettas is better than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I'm sorry, guys, Jay Jettas right now is better than Jamar Chase. Probably better than CeeDee Lamb.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, I think that Jamar is definitely going to sign before Jay Jettas.
I would be willing to bet a decent set of that. I just disagree. I think Chase is going to want to set the market, and he's going to want to get more money than Justin Jefferson because in his eyes, he's a better wide receiver than Justin Jefferson. Now, regardless, that's an argument
to do that. But
I'm just saying that I would be surprised. Now, it could happen, but I would be surprised. Let's go on to a couple of the other, because we got a lot to get to as well on the show today. Bengals are investing between $100 and $120 million into Paycor in the next couple of years. Just a headline to drop in there. The stadium lease is coming up in a couple of years. That'll be something that we'll have to dive into probably this time next year. That's probably like a next summer show to kind of go into the lease and everything.
It's a big discussion topic.
It is. Yes. And it is very passionate. And I'll be honest, I don't know a lot. I don't know enough about it to really get that deep into talking about it. So I think like next summer, it is a good topic to really dive into everything that goes along with that, with it. And then the other NFL news that was released earlier today, the 2026 NFL draft is heading to the city near West Virginia. Cincinnati.
We should try to go.
Do I have to go to that awful city?
Oh. Dude, okay. Sports teams aside, I've never been to Pittsburgh. Heard it's a good place. Also, they got pierogies and Permanis, all the other like.
Permani Brothers was pretty solid.
Permanis is good. Have you ever had a pierogi?
I mean, I've not had one from Pittsburgh, but I have had a pierogi.
It's a fried dumpling filled with mashed potatoes. Like that's delicious. That's
the frozen kind aren't even bad.
They're pretty good.
Yeah. I don't remember.
They also put French fries on salad there. I'm not a big fan of that. That sounds really counterproductive.
Spoken to somebody from West Virginia, I feel like that'd be right up your alley.
Fries on salad? No, that
making a healthy thing unhealthy.
Everything
that sounds West Virginia as possible. That's most of the news headlines though for today. But the big one came out earlier this morning. The Bengals Ring of Honor nominees have been released for 2024. And as we predicted on the show last week, the Commanders game will be the Ring of Honor night. It was interesting. I saw Jay Morrison from Pro Football Network. He tweeted earlier today that he expects it to be a whiteout game, but he wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they switch it up and go Stripe the Jungle for that game against the Commanders. I still expect that to be the whiteout game, and then Stripe the Jungle being against the Browns on Prime. But it wouldn't shock me if they switch it up just to try something a little bit different, or maybe they do something completely different for that game. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go through each of the nominees, and we are going to discuss them, just why they're a candidate, why they shouldn't be a candidate, and so on, or should be. And then at the end, Mick and I are going to give our votes and our picks. So we aren't going to say who it is until the very end of the pod for today. Sound good?
Let's do it.
We'll just go in alphabetical order, starting off with Jim Breach. Arguably the best kicker in Bengals history. Kicker from 1980 to 1992. He was the kicker on the first two Super Bowl teams for the Bengals. Impressive stat here from him. 9 for 9 in overtime games in his career. never missed an overtime. He was the 5th leading scorer in the NFL in the 1980s and the only person to score 1,000 points in Bengals history. 71.5% field goal percentage and 95.9% on extra points. Here's a stat, though, that really stands out and makes you appreciate Evan McPherson. Jim Breach was 6 of 26 beyond 50 yards in his career. Evan McPherson is 21 of 28. So in nearly the same amount of field goals attempted, Evan McPherson has made 15 more. Now, I'm not trying to take a shot at Jim Breach by this. Obviously, the times have changed.
Your vote. He's not getting your vote. That's the only thing I see there. You're not getting the vote, Jim.
But I think, great kicker. I hate to say this, but to me, he's almost like the ring of very good. But I don't know if you have anything else on Jim Breach.
I don't really have much on him. Kicked for the team for a long time. Is he still the points leader, I would assume, of the franchise?
He's the only person to score 1,000 points in Bengals history.
Okay. I mean, that carries a little bit of weight. Yeah, I don't know. He's going to be on the ballot every year until he's not on the ballot anymore.
And I'd be interested to see if he would be one of those that does he get if Evan McPherson goes for 15 years and continues on the trajectory that he is, does he then get bumped off by Evan McPherson? Or does he maybe find his way in 15 years once because it'll be, I'm fascinated by this vote after we start getting a lot of these guys in from the 80s and 90s. How does it start going with the sprinkling of the guys like AJ Green and Geno Atkins and
I thought they should have
Andy Dalton?
I guess I don't know what the eligibility.
They've never really mentioned it
because they didn't add anybody this year.
They did not.
I don't think they added anybody. I don't know if they've added anybody since the ballot's inception, honestly.
And maybe these are the guys that they just want us to vote on, and then they'll decide on adding some more. But you're going to get into needing more modern-day Bengals. You've got Chad Johnson and you've got Willie Anderson, but there'll be some discussions to be had on some other of the new guys as well.
I think you also got to think coaches at some point, right? I mean,
yeah.
Sam Weiss, I don't know why he hasn't been nominated here, or Forrest.
Dave Shula.
Dave Shula.
No?
Marvin. I mean, Marvin's going to be there at some point, you would think, if they start putting in coaches on the ballot. I mean,
yeah, it'll be
winningest coach in history. Took 17 years to do it.
It'll be interesting to see. James Brooks, next guy up on the list, second leading rusher in Bengals history. Joe Mixon finished 34 yards behind him. So it was really close to passing him, which is a little disappointing that Joe didn't get to that point. Rushed for 1,000 yards 3 times in his 8 years with the Bengals. During those 8 years, though, here's the stat for you. He had more yards from scrimmage than all but 3 players in the NFL. Those 3 players, Eric Dickerson, Roger Craig, Marcus Allen. It's a pretty good list there to be a part of.
Yes, it is.
Really, really good running back for James Brooks. 4.8 yards a rush as a Bengal. I know that we weren't alive to see James Brooks, but everyone older than us just says that he was nasty. I feel like is the word to describe him as a running back.
He was the guy. I mean, it sounds like honestly he's probably my favorite running back in Bengals history. We'll get into why I don't think Corey Dillon is later, but yeah, I mean, I like James Brooks a lot. 4-time Pro Bowler, played with the team for 8 seasons, and I guess I mean he was a part of the integral both of the Super Bowl appearance teams in the 80s. 4.8 yards a carry is pretty darn good. I think he was decent as a receiver too, which I don't know. I don't think there probably were a lot of great receiving backs in the 80s. I could be wrong, but yeah, I like James Brooks. I think he'll get in eventually. But yeah,
he's a definite candidate that can be mentioned on this list for sure. The next guy up, Chris Collinsworth, 4-time 1,000-yard receiver.
You know how many freaking comments I've seen today
Okay, yeah, I want
So
let's
I
let's come
don't
back.
want
Let's
to vote Collinsworth
let's come
in.
back to this. Let's come back to that in a minute here. He's one of the few Bengals to score a touchdown in a Super Bowl.
Yes,
That's
he
one thing.
is.
3-time All-Pro, nearly 7,000 receiving yards in his career. He has been a long-time broadcaster in the NFL. Yes, he hates the Bengals. No, he doesn't. Can we stop that? He does not hate the Bengals. If you think that, I'm sorry, but stop. 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 He's just not a homer when he gets on air because he's trying to do a job of going down the line. Now, what he probably does is he tries too hard to stray that line and might sway a little bit towards it feeling like he's anti, but that's because he's trying not to come off as the former Bengal. But he's really good at his job. It's not easy to do, and he's really good at it. So the Chris Collinsworth hate really is honestly the stupidest thing in the world. I've said
Yeah,
what I said, Nick.
I think Chris is a great color commentator. I don't get annoyed with Chris at all. Some people don't like his voice. They think it sounds like people say it sounds nasally. It sounds I don't know. Some people say it sounds douchey. I guess that's some way to put it. I like Chris Collinsworth. I like the takes that he has. I like that I subscribe every month to his service that he owns essentially that really helps with things. I love Chris Collinsworth. I think he's a great guy. I think he lives not too far away from me. He lives in Fort Thomas somewhere, private mansion over there. But yeah, 3-time second team All Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler. Like you said, caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. I see the eclipse 1,000 yards 4 times. Was great. He was a good player.
Yeah, and he's a good candidate for the Ring of Honor. Next up on the list. Oh, boy. Next up on the list for the Bengals Ring of Honor is Corey Dillon. Going through some of the stats here, he's the Bengals' all-time leading rusher with 8,061 yards in just 7 years. Had games of 278 yards in 2000 and 246 yards in 1997. Mick, how do you feel about Corey Dillon as a candidate for the Ring of Honor?
He's not getting my vote, guys. It's not happening. I'm sorry. But you talk about Hall of Very Good. I'm putting Corey Dillon in the Hall of Very Good. Now, I know he rushed for 1,000 yards every year he was in Cincinnati. He was also playing in an era where rushing yards were heavily inflated. And he never was top 10. I think he was only top 10 in the league in rushing yards, I think once, if I remember correctly. I'm pulling up the stats right now. But the difference between Corey Dillon and a lot of other people on this list is that I think more people on this list had years where they were the elite guys in their position group at some point in their career. I mean, you look at Tim Crumroy, he had at least 2 seasons of elite defensive tackle play. Same with Fulcher, at least 2 or 3 seasons as an elite top tier safety. Chris Collinsworth, another example, three years in a row of being probably a top 2, top 3 wide receiver in the league. You never got that with Corey Dillon. Corey Dillon was a solid, Hall of Very Good guy. He's a solid, he would rush for 1,000 yards every season and, maybe get in the top 10 of rushing yards. I'm pulling it up right now. So he started in 1997. His rookie year, he was 18th in the league in rushing yards. 1998, 16th in the league in rushing yards. 1999, 12th in the league in rushing yards. Okay, 7th in 2000. Second, oh wait, no, these are attempts.
So with Corey Dillon too, While you pull those up, I mean, if you want another stat as to kind of take your side of it, of him not deserving to be in the Ring of Honor, the stat I like to look at a lot when it comes to running backs is success percentage. I think it's a good judgment of how good you are. And what that is, it's you have to get a certain amount of the yards on first down, a certain amount on second down, a certain amount on third down, and so on. And as far as successful percentage of a run, I think on first down, it's you have to get 40% of the yard. On second down, you have to get 60% of the yardage to get the first down, and so on. In his career in Cincinnati, Corey Dillon's success percentage on runs, 44.9%. That's not elite by any stretch of the imagination. 44.9%. Now, the question is when he never went above 50% as a Bengal. When he left and went to New England, every year was above 50%. So that's kind of the question with that as well, is how much blame can be put on him playing in a awful era of Bengals football. And is that the reason why he was 44.9 here in New England was the real running back he was, and he was 50%? And how much of that should be inflated into the discussion around Corey Dillon?
I don't think that should be inflated at all. You're
and I'm asking that question to you.
Done as a Bengal. It's I don't care what he did in New England, and I think the New England situation with Corey and how good he was there, I think that plays into a lot of people's reasoning or for why they think he should be in. And I don't think that should matter. I mean, other people played more years in Cincinnati. They played their best years in Cincinnati, I would say. They didn't whine and bitch their way to get off the team. They also didn't whine and bitch that they didn't get the Ring of Honor nod last year. None of them did that. Corey Dillon was the only one to do that. So yeah, I mean, I might be thinking a little bit emotionally because I think Corey Dillon's kind of a tool. But you know what? There were far more deserving people anyways without your whining and complaining. Also, it wasn't top 10 in the league in rushing yards. It was top 5. So he's top 5 once. He was in top 10 in the league in rushing a few years, I think most of his seasons here in Cincinnati. But it's still not. I mean, if you're not top 5, you're not one of the best at your position, probably. I mean, there's.
Am I maybe I don't know. I might be reading this wrong. Is Corey Dillon not getting your vote?
No.
Man.
You want me to tell you who I'd vote above Corey Dillon?
Jim Breach?
James Brooks. No, not Jim Breach.
Well, let's wait because we don't want to give away as to who we're voting on all of this, and we can maybe even do a top 3 voting.
Literally, the majority of the people on this list I'm voting in before Corey Dillon.
Now, with that, you mentioned some of the negatives, especially as far as the personality-wise. He said in 2001 after a game, we'll never win a game with the Brown family in Cincinnati. He tossed his gear into the stands in 2003 and pretty much forced the Bengals to trade him to the New England Patriots at that point. And I think it's an interesting discussion to be had, too, is because he left on poor terms with Bengals fans. I don't care if you're the biggest Corey Dillon fan watching, listening with us tonight. You can't deny that. He left on poor terms with Bengals fans. I'm fascinated because in the last 20 years, we'll just say that. We'll start with him. So about 20 years ago, there have been a couple of players like that could be on that list that left on poor terms, and I'm fascinated to see how long it will take Bengals fans to forgive. And then the extra question is will they forgive? And 2 names immediately come to mind when it comes to this list. And you might be thinking of the same 2 names I am as well, Mick. Number one
of them.
Carson Palmer. He's the most obvious.
Oh, I was thinking of the other guy then.
Okay, then maybe you're thinking of another guy. Maybe more recent guy?
Yes.
Okay. A defensive end, I'm assuming, is who you're thinking of.
Yes.
And Carlos Dunlap. Those are the 2 big ones. And I'm fascinated by how Bengals fans, how long it will take them to forgive. And then the question is the forgiveness, is the career worthy? And the reason why fans won't vote is because of the way they acted? And should that matter? I don't know the answer to it when it comes to that. Or should it be voted strictly on what you did on the field? It's interesting. I don't know the answer to it, but I think it's a question to ask as well.
I mean, even if it is what you did on the field, like there are probably more deserving players than Carson Palmer or Carlos Dunlap, just based off of on the field accomplishments. I mean, you talked about other guys.
You could say with Carlos Dunlap, he's second all time in Bengals in sacks.
Yeah, but has he ever been an elite edge rusher? And no, he hasn't. He's always been the Corey Dillon. I'd call Carlos the Corey Dillon of edge rushers, where he has been pretty good, very good edge rusher for a long period of time here at Cincinnati, but he was never one of the best edge rushers in the league. Honestly, I think Trey probably has more accolades as a Bengal than Carlos Dunlap has ever had. And Trey's been here in half the amount of time.
Trey Flowers?
Yeah, Trey Flowers.
Bengals legend Trey Flowers, right? But no, I mean, the Corey Dillon is fascinating because you see fans on both sides. There are a lot of fans that are on your side, Mick, where they would never vote for Corey Dillon. Yes. Oh, yeah. I've seen them.
And then the algorithm must be messing with me today.
You have some fans on the other side of it who are very outspoken about he needs to be in. And maybe the loudest of being outspoken about saying he needs to be in is Corey Dillon himself. He had the big tirade, might be the word, with Paul Dehner last year, where he was impassioned, I think is a good way. But
tirade's a good way to put it.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Because, listen, we will take opinions. Mick will listen. You can say he's wrong. He's a big boy. He can listen to that. Or you can say he's right. He'd probably appreciate knowing that he's not alone
we both know
in the Corey Dillon hate.
We both know he's getting in this year.
I think that there's probably more than likely that he will.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in how it goes. Let's go on to some of the other names as well. Maybe we can come back to the Corey Dillon discussion a little bit later on. David Fulcher, third most interceptions by an NFL safety during his 8 years in Cincinnati, and he was a tackling machine. Another thing with David Fulcher is, I mean, Mick, we've been going to games now for the last 3 or 4 years. We've pretty much not missed a home game, and I think I see David Fulcher at every single home game.
Yeah.
Like, he is an ambassador for the team.
Yeah. You ever go see him at Cardboard Heroes at the Florence Mall?
Is that still a thing?
Cardboard Heroes. I don't know, but he was the owner.
I forgot that he was the owner there because he would be in there sometimes.
No, I met him when I was a kid. It was a great time. Signed a hoodie for me. Yeah, I like David Fulcher a lot. He's a good guy, good player. Has stayed in the community pretty much his entire life, or his entire adulthood, whatever you want to call it, ever since he was here, as a Cincinnati Bengal. But yeah, he had some years of elite play. First team All-Pro in 1989, second team All-Pro in 1990. Had a great stretch from 88 to 90, where he was one of the best safeties in the league. And yeah, I think that I would vote for him before Corey Dillon.
You're not alone, Mick. Frank is on your side.
Frank is on the side here. That's all that matters. That's all. I only need you, Frank.
You're not alone. And see, I think I might be in the biggest minority on Corey Dillon, Mick. I'm neutral.
Yeah.
On Corey Dillon. And that might be the biggest minority is that I very much see both sides, and I'm like, I don't know which side to swim to. If that makes sense. I don't know if I should go to the shallow end or the deep end, and I don't really know which side's shallow and which side's deep. You might be in the shallow end because there's not many people there, whereas more people are in the deep end, or maybe it's flipped. I don't know. But yeah, David Fulcher, really good candidate. He might be one of those guys that can sneak in a year or two when we get some of these bigger names in as well. I would never be against voting for David Fulcher.
I wouldn't be against voting for him either. I like him a lot. So
next guy on the list, or did you have more to say about Fulcher?
No. I just like this guy as much as I like David Fulcher. I love this guy.
Tim Crumry,
Hey.
188 games career with the Bengals, never missed a game. He was the only defensive lineman in the 1980s that had 600 plus tackles. He was a mainstay on the defensive line of the Bengals in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's a great player. Famously had the nasty broken leg in the Super Bowl. That was from the 88 season, I would think, right? Yes. Yeah, it was the 88 season. Snapped his leg in the Super Bowl. It was gruesome. It was ugly. Made him a legend amongst Bengals players. We saw some really good years of top tier defensive tackle play from Tim Crumroy. Let's see. First team All Pro in 88, second team All Pro in 87. Had a good stretch there in the late 80s. Mainstay on the defensive line, like you said. I think he was a really good defensive tackle.
Yeah, he really solid guy, and another one that has been a great ambassador for the Bengals since he left. Speaking of the next person on the list, Dave Lapham, Mr. Bengal. As a player or an announcer, has been a part of all three of the Super Bowl teams for the Bengals. He's been involved with the Bengals in 48 of the last 50 years. That's impressive. I mean, probably the only other person that can say that. There's probably only one other person, Mike Brown.
Mike Brown.
Yeah, Katie, I guess technically, but she was a kid. Like, if you want to say that, but like the kids of Mike Brown, but it's the Brown family is the only other person that can say this. Dave Lapham, for one, super nice guy, and very knowledgeable, and he loves the Bengals with Dave Lapham.
Yep. I'd be voting for him as kind of more of a brand ambassador than I would be a player.
He was a good player.
He was a good player. I mean, he started on the team for, I think, almost a decade or a little over a decade. I mean, so he put in a lot of years, put in a lot of games, but he's just been the overall, I mean, he's called Mr. Bengal for a reason, right? I mean, he is the brand ambassador for the team. Has been a mainstay with Dan Horde on, and calling every Bengals game, at least that I can ever remember. It just seems like a really good person. He was really nice when we met him at an event a couple of years ago that Bengal Gym hosted. I would be for Dave Lapham getting in here, and I think he's kind of a dark horse to make it this year.
Yeah, without question. Max Montoya. He was the other guard with Dave Lapham there on that Bengal offensive line. A 3-time Pro Bowler, and if you ask anyone that knows offensive line play, they'll say that he's the best offensive lineman not named Anderson or Munoz in Bengals history. He's the best interior offensive lineman. He's one of those guys that never gets the credit, though, that he probably deserves of being just a really darn good guard.
This is the best interior offensive lineman
in Bengals history.
Has nobody ever heard of Russell Bodine?
I thought you were going to pull out Trey Hopkins or Alex Redmond. It popped up today. It was either today or yesterday. Popped up that you remember Alex Redmond got suspended like the first 4 games of a season for using PEDs. It's been 5 or 6 years ago. So it popped up on my time hop because apparently I had kept the screenshot for some reason. Let me see if it was today on my time hop. And it was just funny because I chuckled. I was like, oh, that's right. Yes, okay. 5 years ago today, tweet from Adam Schefter. Bengals guard Alex Redmond, who started 15 games last season, is being suspended 4 games for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing drugs policy. He played last season with a torn labrum and hamstring injury and made a bad decision to try and help it. Direct quote from Adam Schefter 5 years ago today. So today in Bengals history, Alex Redmond got suspended for 4 games. If you had an Alex Redmond mention when we were talking about the Ring of Honor on your bingo card, congratulations, you won.
They should get him on there. Get him on the ballot. I don't know. Max Montoya, I don't know. He was a good player. He also was was the owner of the Penn Station I worked in high school.
That's right. I
Loved
forgot about that.
he was a Penn Station, or is, I don't think he sold them, is a Penn Station franchisee. I think he franchises a lot of them.
Did you have many interactions with him?
I only met him a couple times. He was a nice guy. Said hi to me, asked me my name, told me I was doing a good job.
Well,
While I was making $7.25 an hour.
Hell yeah.
As a high school employee.
America.
But yeah, played 11 years here in Cincinnati. He had a long career. He had a 16-year career. He played 5 years with Raiders after us. But yeah, he made it to the Pro Bowl 3 times as a Bengal, second team All Pro in '89. Yeah, I'd say probably the third best offensive lineman in history. If we're just looking at longevity, and maybe fourth, because Andrew Whitworth is probably third. But
are we just forgetting about Alex Redmond? Like, are we just going to have the disrespect to Alex Redmond?
Fifth, because Alex
Bobby
Redmond
Hart
before Billy Price.
Oh God. Okay. Bad memories now. We've gone too far.
Jake Fisher.
Oh gosh. How about we talk about Leapin' Lamar Parrish?
Dennis Rowland.
Leapin' Lamar in his 13 seasons as a Bengal, he trailed only Mel Blount and Ken Riley in interceptions with 47. Here's a wild stat for you, Mick. He is one of 6 corners in NFL history with at least 8 Pro Bowls. And he is the only one not in the Hall of Fame in that group. Now, Pro Bowls isn't a perfect way to grade a player. Today, I would say no. But back then, it actually meant a little bit more. So I think it was a little bit better of a judgment of a player. Lamar Parrish, Bengals have had a lot of really good defensive backs, and he is probably the second best behind Ken Riley. And you could maybe even make an argument that he was the best.
I would say he's the best. We saw more top tier, I think, elite play out of Lamar Parrish. Now, Ken Riley has more interceptions. People say, oh, yeah, Ken Riley's better because of that. I just don't know if I agree with that. And no knock on Ken Riley. But like the interceptions argument, I would say is the equivalent. If you're going to use interceptions as an argument, Geno Stone should have been a first team All-Pro this past season. So, anyways, leaving Lamar. If you say 8 Pro Bowls, what screams out to me more, and I think is a lot more important, was an All-Pro 5 times. Now, how many of those were with the Bengals? 3 of those were with the Bengals. 2 of them were with Washington. But yeah, he was a perennial Pro Bowler, a perennial All-Pro, either first or second team. I think was probably one of the best corners of his era in the late 70s and early 80s. I guess throughout the whole 70s, not just the late 70s. But yeah, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about Lamar Parrish. I think that he would be a great candidate to get in. I think a lot of the older people are going to vote for him. A lot of the longtime season ticket holders are I think he's going to pull a lot of votes from those guys.
Yeah, I think he'll be a very interesting question. We got 2 more to discuss here on our list. Bob Trumpy. In 1969, he averaged 22.6 yards per catch. It's the second longest of any tight end in a single season in NFL history. That's a heck of a stat there, because there have been a lot of really, really good tight ends in NFL history. And that was in an era of football, too, where it's not like passing was a huge part of the game. He also, long-time broadcaster, he called 4 Super Bowls. He is a mainstay in Cincinnati. I know he was a ruler of the jungle one game last year as well. Bob Trumpy, really good candidate in here as well.
Isn't he a veteran as well? Is he a decorated veteran?
I believe you're right on saying that.
He is a naval. Yeah, he was in the Navy. He was during Vietnam. Wonder if he hung out with Charlie. Charlie was also in the Navy during Vietnam. Charlie's my grandpa, by the way. Yeah. Bob Trumpy, 10-year Bengal, was a perennial Pro Bowler. Not perennial, but made it twice. So, made the Pro Bowl a couple times. 22.6 yards a catch in 1969 is crazy. It's you don't know. I don't know any. I don't think even. I doubt Randy Moss even put that up as an average, yards per reception number.
So therefore, Bob Trumpy is better than Randy Moss.
I think that's a valid argument to make.
It's fact. Mm-hmm.
Now here's my question. I'm surprised Bob Trumpy is on here, and I think it's probably because he was a longtime Bengal and probably a fan favorite. But like, if you look at Rodney Holman's stats in his accomplishments, I think he's just as, if not more, accomplished than Bob Trumpy just throughout his entire career. I mean, we're seeing 2 Pro Bowls from Bob Trumpy, played 10 years for the Bengals, but Rodney Holman played 11 years, made an All-Pro team 3 times, and also made the Pro Bowl 3 times. So I don't know. I don't know if you ever thought about that, Sam, or not. But I mean, no. I like Bob Trumpy, but I don't know why Rodney Holman also isn't on there.
Yeah, and he might be one of those in the next wave. They might add some more names. Probably they're going to have to, starting next year, that they're going to have to start adding some more names because, I mean, you look at this list right now, what is that, 10 guys on there right now? Or 11. So they have 11 members on there. So if next year they're only going to have 9, I mean, you're going to have to start adding some more onto that list for sure. The final name that we have to discuss, though, is Reggie Williams. Most games, sacks, and interceptions of any linebacker in Bengals history. He was the NFL Man of the Year in 1986, and he is one of only 2 players in the NFL in the 1980s who had 50 sacks and 700 tackles. Mainstay of the Bengals defense during that era and the heyday of the Bengals defense there as a linebacker, just a really, really solid player.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have much on Reggie. Played with the franchise for a long time. I want to say he played for like 15 years. Then he played a long time. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He was a mainstay. Never really made a Pro Bowl. Never made an All-Pro team. Was the NFL Man of the Year in 1986. So that's kind of a cool thing. Yeah, I don't have much else on. Oh, he went to the same alma mater as the Brown family did. Do you know where that is?
Dartmouth.
He went to Dartmouth.
Shout out to Dartmouth.
That's why he's on the Ring of Honor list.
Probably. Well, that, and he has most game sacks and linebackers of most sacks, interceptions in any linebacker in Bengals history. That'll help you out in getting onto the Ring of Honor list as well. Okay. There are your nominees. Jim Breach, James Brooks, Chris Collinsworth, Corey Dillon, David Fulcher, Tim Crumry, Dave Lapham, Max Montoya, Lar Parrish, Bob Trumpy, and Reggie Williams. Mick and I, so this is what, year 3 for us for Bengals season tickets? Year 3. Yep. Oh, no. Where did you go? What did you do? You're clicking around.
What did you do? How do you zoom this out again?
Okay. Here. Okay, I fixed it.
Wait, no.
Stop hitting buttons. Stop it. I don't like that you have power to do this. I was like, what are you doing over here?
All of a sudden, it was an accident, okay? It was an accident.
I was like, what happened? Why am I all of a sudden going full screen? Okay. Let's go here and let's have our votes. So, Mick, we have been a season ticket holder for 3 years, meaning that our vote is worth 3 points. Look at us go. We are special of having our vote be 3 points. So we each get 1 vote. Since we have 2 tickets, we each get 1 vote. So that's how we've done it, and we've done it every year. Is that so? Mick, you get to pick 1, and I get to pick 1, and that's how we do it. Last year, because last year, who was it? It was Chad and who was Chad in? That's right. And I think you voted Chad, and I voted Boomer. But I think if we would have decided, I think that would have been our 2 anyways. I think we would have been pretty unanimous on that. The year before, I think you were Chad and I was Willie. Or, again, we were both in agreement, Chad and Willie, when it comes to this. This year, though, we might not be in full agreement, so we each get our one vote. Mick, who will you vote for the Bengals Ring of Honor for the class of 2024?
I'm going with Leaping Lamar Parrish. I think that he had more seasons of elite play at his position than any other nominee on this list. This guy should be in the Hall of Fame with Ken Riley in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Yeah, I think that he's probably he's the most deserving out of all of these players on the list.
I'm not going to disagree with you at all when it comes to this, but you're going to hate me for my pick.
God.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not doing it. I wouldn't do that to you.
Oh,
my vote for the Cincinnati Bengals Ring of Honor for the class of 2024 is Dave Lapham.
Okay.
He's Mr. Bengal. He is more than deserving, and I think you look up and down this list, and I'm not sure that being on the Ring of Honor would mean more to a single person than Dave Lapham. I mean, the dude, like I mentioned, 48 out of 50 years he's been involved in the Cincinnati Bengals. He is a homer to the core. He loves this team. He wants to see them succeed more than anything. And because of that, I think he deserves to have his name up as the Bengals Ring of Honor. Dave Lapham is my vote.
I wouldn't be against that whatsoever. I honestly, he might be number 2 on my list. Like it's a pretty for everybody after Leaping Lamar, I would say, it's probably a 3-way tie for me between Lapp, Fulcher, and Tim Crumroy. I think that those are the other 3 guys I would be thinking about. But yeah, I think Lapp definitely deserves it as a brand ambassador. So yeah, I wouldn't be against seeing him getting a jacket at all in September.
And nothing against guys like, I mean, even you could throw Lamar Parrish into this group. Nothing against guys like that. I don't know that there would be a louder stadium pop than Dave Lapham getting his jacket. Like I feel like
out of this list nominees,
yes,
the only one I think that gets more is probably Chad, right? Just because of
Chad's already in.
Yeah, I know, so but I'm just saying, yeah, out of anybody on this list, yeah.
Well, I mean, there are other people that would. I mean, Burrow would get a pretty loud pop, but he's not quite at that point yet. But still, so I think Dave Lapham, he is very well deserving. And honestly, Mick, I'll tell you this right now. I'll spoil our shows for the next however many years it needs to be. Until he gets in, he's probably going to get my vote because he deserves to be in the Bengals Ring of Honor. And I hope he gets in. And if anything else, you were saying what you said about Corey Dillon. Corey Dillon, if we're being honest, didn't really want to be a Bengal. Guess who wants to be a Bengal? Dave Lapham. And that should mean something. That should mean something. We want to be a Bengal. We are season ticket holders, which shows that we put our hard-earned money behind wanting to be a fan and a supporter of this franchise. So because of that, I want to vote for somebody that respects that and so on. So that's why Dave Lapham gets my vote, because I think him more than any other person on this list, again, not taking shots at anyone else, really knows what that means. And that's why he's Mr. Bengal. And I think Lamar Parrish, extremely well-deserved as well.
It's a good way to put it. I think that's a good way to cap this episode here.
Yeah, for sure. We'll next week, I've got a topic idea that we could run by Mick after the show on just, we're running in now to the off season where topics are going to be a little bit harder to come by. We've come up with some that we can go through. Maybe we'll even do a round table or two, bring in our guys, Tommy and Alex, and have some longer form discussions on maybe some ideas like Corey Dillon and so on. And the T. Higgins contract situation and everything that goes along with it. But we'll be back next week to start diving into the off season even more, getting you ready for training camp, which is about 2 months away. And I mean, heck, start to the season, is 3.5 months away. So it's coming quicker than we probably think. And I, for one, cannot wait until it's September the 8th and the Bengals are taking on the Patriots, and it's Joe Burrow versus, I assume Drake May will start that first game. I'd be surprised if he isn't.
Oh, I'd go Brissett. I'd say
You think Brissett will start?
I think Brissett starts week 1.
Frank says his votes would be Max Montoya and Lamar Parrish. Listen, if it's those two, I'm not going to be mad at all. Max Montoya definitely would deserve it as well. And Lamar Parrish, I mean, obviously we're both in very much agreement there.
Yeah.
But remember to follow us on our social media channels. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of those. We're also on your favorite podcasting platform, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts. We're on all of them. You can follow us there and not miss a single show. Mick, our votes again, Lamar Parrish and Dave Lapham. Do you have any parting thoughts or anything you want to say to Corey Dillon, since he's probably watching right now?
Have a good rest of your week. Have a great Memorial Day. Who Day.
That'll wrap us up. Until next time, Who Day.
Who Day. Thanks for watching.